Drugs. They can turn the kindest and nicest soul into a monster. The things that some would do for the next hit is downright horrifying. I hope you're ready, for tonight we are indeed going to somewhere dark. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Back in my early 20s, I was trying to kick a major 4-year heroin addiction. I was trying to do it on my own, which meant that I wasn't using it as much, and that it would be months in between each hit. On this fateful day, someone had given me around $100 worth of heroin. I had never seen these, as they were fairly new on the streets. So after getting off work at the little coffee shop I worked at, I popped the 2 teeny tiny treats into my mouth and hopped on the train to head into Boston to go see one of my favorite punk bands. Now, anyone who knows about kicking a habit, when you start to use less and less, your tolerance goes down. So the golden rule is that there must be less than you're used to. I had no idea how strong one of these things were, and like I said, it was a major habit. So of course I took them both. And for those who don't know, one OC80, or about $100 worth, is enough to let a 200-pound junkie feel good. So being a 110-pound girl that hasn't touched this stuff in a couple of months, I don't even remember the show. Never mind do I know how I got on the train and off at my stop. Anyway, by the time I got to my ratty little borough of Beantown, I was throwing up every 20 feet or so. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I didn't live in a very good part of the city, and curling up on a corner and hoping I didn't die wasn't an option. So I propped myself along the wall and was trying to inconspicuously hurl while trying to make the 5 blocks to my apartment. I was about halfway there when I noticed a shitty car going really slowly behind me. I figured whoever was in it was looking for a hooker, as the part of town in which I lived, anyone could be a hooker. So I just turned and looked at him and shook my head. This was usually enough to get them to drive on. This time, it wasn't. The guy pulls right up to me in this 30-year-old crappy green Honda and says something in a very thick Korean accent. "You need help. Get in. Get in." The man looked to be about 30 and of Asian descent, dressed in jeans and a blue tattered t-shirt, and I kid you not, a tux jacket. That has nothing to do with anything, I just thought it strange. But living in Boston, you see some strange stuff. Now, even being a junkie and punk chick, I was always polite. So I was nice to strangers, as to not hurt any feelings, and because of this, I would get myself into dangerous situations, and I knew this. So I just wiped the puke off my mouth and smiled at the guy and said, "Thanks, but my boyfriend is waiting for me just down the street." There was no boyfriend, and I actually had quite a bit of blocks to cover. But I was nice, not stupid. Well, not that stupid. considering the pill-sickened state I had myself in. The guy goes, "You're sick. You need ride." Okay, this guy can't take a hint. I told him again that I did not need a ride, but thank you, and I started to hobble faster across the street. Unfortunately, it was one way, and he pulled up close enough to the curb so that he could grab me from the driver's side. Alright, now I'm getting scared. It's almost 3 a.m. and no one is out on this side of the street. "No, you get in now." I was feeling really sick and embarrassed at this point. I was trying to hold off throwing up in front of this guy, and I know I am about to hurl again, and was getting pissed. So I yelled, "No, I know get in now. Look dude, I'm not gonna suck your dick, so just leave." And then I puked. Now, I was always on the small side, and hung around and lived in places where it was a good idea to have some sort of protection. Tonight, I had my gravity knife tucked in my boot. So when Mr. Good Samaritan started to get out of his car, as I was bent over, I pulled out the blade and let the blade slide out as I stood up and said, "Please just leave me the hell alone." His eyes focused on the knife, and he got back into the car. Like I had said before, his car was a piece of shit, so when it took off it was really loud. I watched him turn the corner, and started back on my wall crawl home. As I turned to the next corner, lo and behold, there he was at the end of that street, and he took off again. When he saw me stop and stand there looking at him, but the whole way back, I could either see him or hear his muffler. I still hadn't put my knife away, because I knew if he actually got a hold of me, I was in no condition to be able to get him off, without a lucky stab anyway. He actually drove by me as I was fighting to open the door to my crappy little duplex. My roommate and I lived on the bottom floor, but once I got in, I felt safe enough to crawl to the couch and pass out, because my roommate's big-ass skinhead boyfriend was there, and his pit/something mix, who was a love bug but smart enough to know when not to be. When I finally woke up the following evening, as those things really hit me hard, my roommate told me that she couldn't believe I had slept through all the ruckus. Apparently, the dog had started barking at 4:30 a.m. and wouldn't stop, so they let him out of the room and tried to go back to sleep. But Rudy wasn't having that. They came back out to tell him to shut up, and he was running back and forth between the back corner window and the window behind the couch I was passed out on, which was the actual backside. Finally, standing on the couch and over me, and going batshit crazy, acting like he was trying to bite through the friggin' glass, without waking me. My roommate later told me that she had checked to make sure that I hadn't OD'd and died. This was the point where my roomie's boyfriend decided to go out and check what the heck his dog was trying to kill. He grabbed the bat that we kept by the door and made his way to the back, where the window to the couch was. He heard a lot of noise going around the other side, and living in a crappy part of the city, there was a lot of crap around the building, and then a car starting up. A loud car. By the time he ran to the front, the car was halfway down the street. When he made his way back around to check the window that Rudy was trying to eat through, there was a bunch of crates moved from under the first window he was barking at, stacked up under the window where the couch was, and the screen had been cut where you put your fingers through to open it. I always read these threads where people say I get goosebumps just writing this, and I shake my head thinking they're so overdramatic. And now I feel like an asshole, because there really is no way to describe how you feel reliving this. Over the next few weeks, my boyfriend and Supermutt stayed at our place because we kept hearing noises, and, imagined or not, it scared the hell out of us. Quite a few times the boyfriend would run out when he would hear something, and would sometimes even catch a glimpse of the guy as he went around the corner. But he was never fast enough. My boyfriend would blame the guy on being a ninja, but we knew he was just too slow. Some may ask why we just didn't let Rudy out. This was a point in time in my state where they were thinking of outlawing pit bulls. They had a really bad rap. If we had let him out, Rudy would have caught him, and that would have just ended bad on a lot of levels. But seriously, what kind of person still tries to get into a house with a psycho pit bull and a 6'2" skinhead trying to kill you with a baseball bat? Now, you might ask why we didn't call the cops. Well, like I said, I was into some bad stuff, and as a rule, punks don't like cops. However, the neighborhood I live in, we all talk to each other, and some of them were cop callers. My next door neighbor knew what was going on, and called the cops one night when she heard someone in her kitchen. She lived alone, locked herself in her bathroom, and started yelling that the cops were on their way. But this guy was persistent, and was trying to pop the lock from the outside until he actually heard sirens and booked it. The lady said she heard a loud car start and looked out the bathroom window that faced the street to see, you guessed it, a crappy old green car in the driveway. When I heard this, I knew, and I just felt really bad. I mean, this lady is like 87 and lives alone. What would have happened if he got in? Oh, and why didn't we let Rudy eat him? When the cops finally got there, the three of us were outside, so they started asking us if we had seen or heard anything. So we told them what had been going on, and I gave a description of who I thought was doing it, but they all said that they weren't sure of the details, because I hadn't been feeling well at the time. The cop that was writing it down almost threw his pad and pencil down, saying that if people like us, punk rocks I guess, smartened up and called the police, they could have caught the creep. Apparently the creeper fit the description of the same guy that they were looking for, that was wanted for quite a few sexual assaults around the train station. And now I felt really bad, but I still had to give the cop lip over the people like us in statements. But that's not the point. I've been clean for over 15 years now, and don't live anywhere near town anymore. So I'm pretty sure I would handle things differently now. And I know if I hadn't been messed up then, I would have. As far as I know, they never caught the guy, and I really hope to never meet him again. This was back in my drug-addled days. At the time, I was addicted to heroin and trying to quit. And through the logic of any mind dependent on drugs, I thought I'd try to wean myself off one by using another. I'd done cocaine before, but a mutual junkie friend of mine introduced me to crack. I've always been the type of girl you wouldn't suspect was abusing substances behind closed doors. I'm a fairly good-looking, smart, funny, small Asian woman who dressed as nice as I could afford. I still had my car, and I am well-spoken, with friends and strangers alike. My new junkie buddy and I had been smoking crack, and we wanted more. He would call a buddy of his that lived nearby, and if he didn't answer, he had a backup guy that lived downtown, about 30 to 40 minutes away. The guy that lived downtown was an older male, I guess about 40, and we'd call from my car in the parking lot and tell him that we were there. He'd come down, sell us a bit, and be on his way. After a while, I stopped hanging around my junkie friend, really wanting to quit the heroin completely, and started hitting up his contacts for crack without them. The one close by was fine for a crack dealer, a pretty nice kid. But the few times he was out, I'd call and meet downtown to get it from the older dude. The first time I went, I parked and called, and he came down right away. He got in my car, asked me how I was, and offered to smoke with me. I'm just buying $20 at a time, so smoking his stuff first was a given for me. He suggested we move to his Suburban because the windows were tinted and he didn't feel comfortable smoking in my car. So I said sure, and we went to his car to smoke. We casually chatted. He complimented me a bit. I got the usual, "You're too pretty for this shit" line, and I thanked him and we parted ways. The second time I had come to meet him, he asked me to go up to his apartment. I said sure again, and he met me in the lobby. I was stopped at the front desk and told to sign in. I had to write my name, the time, which apartment I was visiting. I did, and then I rode up the elevator. When I get to his apartment, I was surprised. It was just a single room with a bathroom attached. His bed was against one wall, and the foot was a wall lined with a stovetop, mini fridge, and a small sink. He bragged about how this place only cost him $100 a month. I asked him how it was possible, and he explained that all the housing there was for people on parole. He informed that he'd only been there for a few months, and he'd just been in jail for 8 years. For, well, you guessed it, manufacturing and distributing crack cocaine. I shrugged and plopped down on the edge of the bed. He asked if I wanted to watch anything, and I said no, as I didn't want to be there any longer than I had to. I just wanted to smoke, buy my drugs, and leave. He said sure, but casually turned on the TV as he stood up to load the pipe for us. As he's loading the pipe, with my back turned to the TV, I blushed. As he's loading the pipe, back turned to the TV, I blush as I notice it's a porn playing volume off. He doesn't notice until he turns around and says, "Oh, sorry, my bad. I didn't realize," and changes the channel. I pretend to have just looked up saying, "What's up?" and he responded, "Oh, never mind." We smoke, I buy, and he walks me down to the lobby. He says, "Thanks for chilling with me," as I sign out and leave, and a cheerful wave and smile in place. The third time I went there, I just went right to the lobby, signed in, and let myself into the elevator, up to his floor. I stepped in, and what do you know? Porn on the TV. This time it's loud, and the girl in it was just obnoxious. She starts to give the guy head, slobbering all over like a dog with a bone, and I stupidly acknowledge it. I say, "Could we turn that off? The girl is annoying." He laughs and asks, "What's so annoying about her?" I say, "Well, for starters, she's really noisy. I don't know many women that shriek like that when honestly feeling pleasure." He thought it was stupid, so it was left on. And he asks what I would do instead. Blah blah, being creepy, but not in any way that alarmed me. I've had my fair share of creeps in my day, and it takes a bit more than a porn conversation to rifle me. When suddenly there's a knock on the door. He quickly flicks off the TV, hops up and opens it. Standing there is another male, a bit younger, kind of heavy set, asking if he had anything. Dude says yeah, come on in. So he does. Well, there's only one place to sit, the bed. So instead of minding my personal space, his face lights up as he sits down next to me. The dude is loading the pipe, and I'm trying to make casual conversation, while I try to mentally talk myself out of the sudden anxiety I'm feeling. I fear a finger lightly glaze against my thigh. I glare at the new arrival and scoot away, making eye contact with the dealer dude that says, "Hey, I'm uncomfortable." The dude doesn't respond, and this new buddy of his starts rubbing my back. It's a slow rub up and down, and I swear he smelled me. He leans in really close, like one about to nibble someone's ear, and I'm about to say stop, when he starts talking to the guy, but it's just fragments like, "Hey man, can I, let me just a little." Dude looks at me, then him. He appraises the situation. They could easily overpower me. He pauses for a minute thinking, then finally says, "Nah man, not her." He sells me an overweight bag and I get out of there. I know what almost happened. I almost got sold. That guy wanted to rape me, and he wanted this dude to help him. I've never been so close to that kind of danger before, and it was that experience that enabled me to quit drugs for good. So Mr. buys his sex from his dealers? Please, let's never meet again. My nephew D lives about 3 miles down the road from me, with his lovely wife Anna, and their 3 sweet, beautiful, loving pit bulls, Ty, Bella, and Jigster. About 6 years ago, not far down the way from us, perhaps 7 to 8 miles, some people were having a summer barbecue, and things got heated and out of hand. These people weren't good people. Apparently, a few days prior, the man hosting the barbecue had a fallout with one of his friends. Anyway, this guy shows up hoping to patch things up, but his wife and a couple of others start a ruckus. Gunfire was exchanged, and the host ended up killing his friend. Word was that they were all drug heads, drug dealers, and thieves. At the time of the incident, a lot of the partygoers were drunk or high. As if that wasn't bad enough, their 3-year-old daughter was in the midst of the fight, with bullets flying. Luckily though, she wasn't hurt. The host and a few of his buds were arrested and held awaiting trial for murder and accessory to murder. Fast forward about 2 months, and his wife and baby daughter are still there with their other drug-dealing, thieving friends hanging about. I had heard that there were several break-ins in the area from my neighbour, who is a volunteer fireman. Things like TVs, computers, jewelry and money, and basically anything of great value was carted off by these crooks. And some people suspected this girl and her clan of drugged up hillbillies were responsible, as reports of vehicles fitting the description of theirs were given. Unfortunately, my nephew D and his wife Anna were victims of these assholes, and not only did they steal 2 big screen TVs, Anna's laptop, D's PlayStation and several games, as well as $800 in cash that they had been saving to pay the utility bills and insurance, but they also stole his fur baby, Jixter. They tried to steal Bella, but she went all Cujo on them, so they left her alone. Luckily, Ty was with Anna at the vet's getting his booster shots, since he was only 6 months old, and was a newer addition to the bunch. Dee's neighbor, who they were really great friends with, witnessed the thieves coaxing and then trying to force Jixter in the car, and called him on his cell to ask if maybe one of his friends or relatives were picking up Jixter for any reason, and of course he said no. The neighbor was already in his car, preparing to go to the local gas station, and he decided to follow them, as, coincidentally, they were going to the gas station too. I should state that where we live is out in rural parts and surrounded by woods and farms, where the local gas station is the closest store out this way, for about 20 miles in either direction, if not more. Everybody knows everybody, and this gas station is the place to go to find out about anything that's going on around here. The people that own the gas station know my nephew D, and he's really quite good friends with them, and he stops by every morning on his way to work, frequently when he needs gas. They also know his dogs really well too, and they are always riding with him, especially Jixter. He's always riding shotgun. Anyway, back to the goons. When they pulled up, the girl went in, followed by the neighbor tailing her, and she was bragging to the gas station owner about her beautiful new pit bull she just purchased from a breeder, and all this other bullcrap. The station owner took one look at Jixter and knew he was Dee's, and that he would never sell him in a million years. The station owner knew who she was, and after she left, the neighbor filled him in, and they called my nephew to tell him to stop by the shop so they could talk to him. After he stopped there and got the details about what went down, he headed home to check out his house, when he discovered that his house had been broken into. He wasn't too concerned at the moment with calling the cops. He just wanted to get his precious Jixter back, and that's what he damn well intended to do. So he grabbed his 9mm, hopped in his truck, and made his way to the bitch's house. When he got there, she was on the porch with some other guys drinking and smoking, and some other guys came out of the trailer. He asked them who the hell he was and what he wanted, and the 2 guys tried to play all tough by telling him to leave. He told them he wasn't, and that he wasn't going to leave until the skank-ass bitch gave him back the dog. She yelled at him that they don't have a dog, so my nephew yelled Jixter's name, and about the time Jixter jumped up from the couch in the house, tearing at the blinds, barking at hearing Dee's call. My nephew said, "Oh really? Tell me again how you don't have a dog, and my dog on top of that." He told her that his neighbor saw her take him, and that the station owner recognized Jixter as his. She tried to say she got it from some breeder again, and then one of the guys chimed in that it's best if he leaves before he ends up like the last guy who trespassed. My nephew responded once again, "I'm not leaving this property without my dog." The other guy and girl said, "You want to bet? You will get off my property." At this point, my nephew lifts up his shirt and shows his holstered 9mm and says, "Oh yeah? This 9mm right here says otherwise. Now, that's my dog, and I want him out of here by the count of 3, or I swear I've got a bullet for each of you with your name on it." Before he could even begin to count to 1, one of the 3 guys opens the door to the trailer and outruns Jigster, happily to my nephew. He backs away, opens the door to his truck, and Jigster climbs in before he leaves and tells them, "I swear to God, if I ever see any one of you guys anywhere near me, my wife, my dogs, or my property again, and if I ever even see you drive down the goddamn road I live on, you're gonna get shot, because I won't hesitate to pump you sons of bitches full of lead. Now do I make myself clear?" And with that, he got into his truck and left. When he got home, he then called the cops to report the break-in. His property couldn't be retrieved, but luckily he had insurance to cover it, and the people were investigated. A while later, they were arrested on drug charges and breaking and entering, and the girl was eventually evicted from her property. My nephew, his wife, Jigster, Bella and Ty still live in the same house with some extra added security, like cameras, alarms, and a gate for their driveway. They haven't had any more break-ins or dog nappings since. I am a 21-year-old male. Many years ago, when I was about 7, something very special happened in my town. Because my mother was the first Vietnamese from there to marry a Korean. So everywhere I went, people would seem very kind and always give me candy and ask to eat a meal. One summer, when I was heading to buy some superhero DVDs, which were only a kilometer away from my grandfather's house, something weird happened. After selecting the DVD that I wanted, I was ready to head back, when an elderly, 30-year-old person riding a motorcycle said my name. Just so that you're aware, in my town, there was a Korean drama, so people would always call me by the name of the main actor and ask if I wanted to get a ride. Of course, being young and stupid, I accepted. So I get on, and he drove me off. When we were near my grandfather's house, he drove past and asked me to come to his house and have some lunch, which was standard practice, so I accepted. Being in the house for 5 minutes, I see that it's very clean, and the stones on the floor were very expensive. So we sit down with his wife and their 2 teenage sons and start having lunch. They bring out some beer cans and ask if I want to drink, and I say no. But it's an old bottle with the lid already being removed, and I find it a little bit weird. There's also something I noticed at the bottom, which was a little white powder that hadn't fully dissolved. Even young and stupid as I was, I felt it very, very odd. I never touched the Coke. After the meal, the 2 sons asked me if I wanted to play some Super Mario on the Nintendo, and I immediately agreed. Their 2 sons led me upstairs to a dimly lit room, when something happens. I get to the doorway, and I'm frozen on the spot. There was no TV inside, no lights, no bed, nothing. I start to panic when I see dozens of syringes on the floor and fly down the stairs trying to run. But I immediately stop by the mother, who was incredibly thin, and she tries to drag me upstairs. I assumed that they wanted to kidnap me, to try and sell me to the Chinese across the border. I started kicking and screaming. Of course, with that skinny body of hers, she couldn't stop me from pushing her downstairs. So I ran out of the house and started to scream at the top of my lungs, while being chased by the guy on the motorcycle with a syringe in hand. It was the middle of the day, so my screaming caused a lot of attention, and many people left their houses in order to see what the commotion was about. Luckily, some young men were running towards the guy, obviously trying to stop him. The guy dropped the syringe on the ground and started shouting as the people began to beat him. This stupid guy was messing with the wrong kid, since my grandfather was a military veteran and had earned a lot of respect among the villagers, so he got beat up good. But it didn't stop there. His two sons rushed forward, both of them having big knives. So some guy picked me up and ran towards my grandfather's house, which was opposite the police station, while the others picked up a metal bar and tried fighting them off. The police had already known what the fuss was about, as some old lady was screaming, and a crowd of police, armed with batons, pistols, and even some automatic assault rifles, ran past me and began to scream. They told them to drop the weapon or they'll shoot, and the two sons had already been high on some heroin and refused to surrender, so they got their hands shot by a marksman. And after that, I don't know what happened, because I was already with my mother crying. After that incident, I was never accepting any more meals or rides from strangers. Apparently every member of his family are drug addicts and dealers, and they had been for years. Since he has a big uncle inside the police, he would have never been arrested or searched. But when he makes that worst decision of his life, of trying to kidnap a well-known kid whose house is literally opposite the police station, he and his whole family got a life sentence in jail. He's already died from HIV and AIDS 5 years ago, but his family are still there. Allow me to preface this adventure by saying the person involved in this story is someone I had known for 10 years, since I was 17. We had dated before on and off, and though I'm a bit of a drama queen, in my heart I did not believe him capable of this level of shittiness. The night in question, I rushed home from work and dolled myself up for a date with an ex. In the last few years, he had been dramatic and stupid and pompous, but he's also beautiful, so I foolishly was willing to overlook these detractors for an evening. We met up at a local bar for karaoke. When I arrived, he was at a table of his own friends, already completely drunk. So drunk that when we went out for a smoke, he was stumbling around off balance, which was my first red flag. He offered for me to come out and hang out with his friends, or to go home and watch a movie. Thinking that he should probably stop drinking, I opted to take him home. We get to his apartment, where he insisted I drive in reverse for 3 blocks to get a parking space, rather than circle the block, and he managed to walk back to his apartment without impediment. When we got in, he started talking about how he wanted to make a difference in the world, and he didn't know where to start, and he just wanted to do the right thing, and how he didn't think he belonged here and so on. He espoused theories from many religions, though ascribing to none, and talked about how some civilizations believe we came from an advanced alien community that existed before the creation of Earth as we knew it. He then took me on a tour of his admittedly grand apartment, with its fine appointments and myriad of books and graphic novels. So classy, so well read. He then poured his first glass of bourbon. We chatted and spoke about music, and comic books, and trips we'd like to take. He packed a hookah with some strawberry shisha, and we smoked and talked. As he continued to pour himself glasses of bourbon, around the fourth glass, he started to tell me personal things about his family, about his fears and worries, and began to cry. I comforted him, not knowing what else to do, and not wanting to be rude. After all, we had been friends for a very long time, and this was the first time he'd ever truly told me anything real about himself or his life. I didn't want to discourage that. He gathered himself up and told me how much he cared about me, how much he valued our friendship, and the deep love he had for me. Though he is not good enough to be my significant other, he still cares deeply for me. This is the kind of unnecessary grand flattery he showers people with. He is, if nothing else, a master of believing his own bullshit, which raised yet another red flag. Eventually the conversation turned towards his personal issues again, and again he cried. I suggested going to bed, because I was worried he would pass out on the spot. I went to bed and waited about 20 minutes. I went back to his living room, trying to find him, sitting up, playing words with his friends on his phone, seemingly unaffected, and on his 6th glass of bourbon, he eventually came to the bedroom, and continued to drink while playing around on iTunes, and took some kind of pills. He had back surgery, and had amassed an array of prescription narcotics to ease his pain. He offered me something to help me sleep, which I turned down, expecting that all his pain medication depresses the respiratory system, and I have sleep apnea, so I need to be able to wake up if I have trouble breathing. By the time he gets into bed, he is what I can only assume is his 7th bourbon, and God knows what combination of pills, or what he had to drink while at the bar. It is now approximately 4 AM, and he starts telling me for about an hour that I am a goddess and should be worshipped. So that's nice, but hard to take along with the crazy. He was talking all kinds of crazy shit, and at one point he was trying to help me birth an alien. I think it was around 6 AM. Then around 8, I wake up to him putting Valium in my mouth. I grabbed the Valium out of my mouth and shouted, "What the hell is this?" And he was like, "Oh, Valium." I explained, like I had earlier in the evening, I couldn't take that if I was going to sleep because it depresses the respiratory system and I have sleep apnea. So he starts running down a list of pills I could take to unlock me. And I was like, I gotta go. And then he backpedaled and was like, "We can just sleep. Let's just go to sleep. Don't leave." Worst of it is that between the almost entire bottle of bourbon he drank over the course of the night and various pills I saw him take, I have no idea if I can hold him 100% responsible for his actions. That guy parties like Keith Richards, and he still has a half pack of my smoke somewhere. I live in a small town of about 8,000 people. It's kind of a country town, but very beautiful, and the people here are generally good. My neighborhood is one where everyone knows each other. New neighbors are given welcome gifts, and we even have a community Facebook page for reporting suspicious activities and hold meetings every other month to discuss things like the drug house. We're pretty tight-knit out here. A few years ago, under mysterious circumstances, a small house at the end of my street was passed off to a drug dealer, and they have attracted all sorts of strange people. We've been told by our local police department to report any suspicious activity. They've been to the drug house multiple times and made arrests, but they seem unable to shut it down for good for some reason. One night, while driving home from work at a little past midnight, I saw a man sitting in my front lawn, with his legs spread out and a bicycle next to him. Startled, I was about to ask him if he was okay, when I got a good look at his face. He had blood dripping down his forehead, and he was grinning ear to ear, giggling uncontrollably. I told him he needed to leave or I'd call the cops. He replied, "It's too late," got up, and rode away on his bike. I routinely see extremely creepy people walking on both sides of the road, people dancing and other people riding bikes. Many of my neighbors have had their homes and cars broken into, and my parents' van has also been broken into as a result of this. One morning, I got a text from my mother asking if my girlfriend had sat in her car and smoked. I thought this was an odd question and was kind of offended, as my girlfriend is a very considerate person and she doesn't smoke cigarettes, which my mum found in the car. Someone had broken into her van, smoked an entire pack of cigarettes, and put them in various places. They had to have just left when my mum went out to the car, as the seat was still warm and the cigarettes still smouldering. Nothing was missing. Someone just used my mum's car to smoke in. We found addicts stealing mail and boxes from my neighbours' front porches, and I've seen drugs change hands several times, all reported to the police. A guy who I went to school with from the age of 5 ended up buying from there and dealing himself for a bit before dying of a drug overdose. I recognized people going in and out of that house as well. I would say the creepiest people by far, though, were the ones who were most active 2 years ago, and terrorized not just my neighborhood, but several others for blocks and blocks without ever getting caught. Ultimately, ghosting after their latest act made the news. It started out weird but non-threatening. My neighbor's security cameras would catch them rearranging their plants or just stumbling through people's yards, seemingly in a haze. Sometimes they'd lay down in someone's yard and seemingly just look up at the sky and talk to each other. Then they started breaking into people's houses. One thing this group of 3 guys had in common was that they all wore white hoodies, and they were good at hiding their faces, so none of the cameras could ever see them. They would also park their car a block or 2 away from wherever they would be. Any time they would do something new, surveillance of them would be posted to my neighbor's Facebook group. It was chilling to watch them occasionally roll through my property, but also seeing them on other people's property. Sometimes right next to their bedroom windows. One video showed them just watching my neighbors sleep through their window for almost an hour. Several miles away, a family with a lot of surveillance cameras got a shock when one of them randomly checked their security footage from the night before. He heard a noise, and while he didn't think the videos would turn anything up, he just wanted the peace of mind. What he found was that these men in white were stalking his family. There were tons of video clips of them moving around the property, peering through windows, but something was different about them this time. They all had guns. Not only that, but they left enough zip ties for each person that lived in the house, as if they knew how many people lived there. At one point in one of the videos, they looked at the cameras, realized they were being recorded, and left. That was the last we saw of them. The news reported on it, and I think they got too spooked to try anything again. At least, not for a long while. It's safe to say I do not wish to meet any of the people who resided or used that house. Their actions got them into a lot of trouble, for those who were caught anyway. And many of them, as you've just heard, had very dark and sinister intentions. Obviously, the abuse of drugs can have effects on one's mind, as can desperation and the need to fuel your habit. I don't know if this was either of those, but I do know that the people who left the house to come and hurt people in my neighborhood did not have the best of intentions. And I fear what would have happened had they not had security. Would they have gone through with their plan? And what would have happened to my neighbors if they had? Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Drugs can really bring out the worst in people, which is really sad, to be honest. If you did like the video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified every time I post. For the most part, I should post daily, so keep an eye out. If you have a story that you would like to share that you would like read on my channel, you will need to send it to my email, or alternatively, post it on my Reddit, which you will be able to find in the description. My good friend, Brief Case, has also released a new and disturbing video, which, lucky for me, I got to hear early before posting. So, if you would like to follow up tonight with something macabre and scary, be sure to follow me over and have a listen. I'm sure we'll all want to find out about the horrific crimes of the Scissor Sisters and how they got their nickname. I'm sure you'll be just as shocked as I was. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.